Hello and welcome to Jeff Walker Books Discussion Podcast Edition. For those of you joining me on the YouTube channel, this is obviously not in YouTube format video, but it's coming to you via the podcast channel. I just wanted to do quickly comment on the SPFBOX that is still ongoing, but I was in Covers with Cassidy, that team. My book had been submitted to two teammates of her review team, and one gave it a full review, and the other one didn't even finish it. So, mainly because, and they were both conveying that they had problems with getting into it, that the one actually won Four Paws in a Book. I forget her name. But she expressed that she doesn't like having the point of view of an FBI person. Which, in the book, the FBI agent is meeting Professor Dark and Miss Shadow in The Burning Fire Rises. And this is through his eyes, because I wanted to start the first book introduction-wise to Professor Dark and Miss Shadow. Now, I did do a kind of like a pre-book of collective stories through the eyes of Professor Dark and Miss Shadow for the most part. And they were just stories that, of them and their adventures and to get to know them. So this first book was a way to get to know the characters through somebody else, because I didn't want to start off right off the bat, because I wanted people to get the sense of who these people are before delving into their own stories. So really the character of the FBI agent is a way to bring the audience with them into the story and get to know what sort of world they live in, the Professor Dark and Miss Shadow. So it was intentional for me to do this. Originally, I wasn't going to. I did want to start off a first book with them as characters, but you thought, this is an introduction. It's the first book. People probably don't even know about this book 0 that I did prior to that, but it's a good way to get them introduced, and then if they want to look for more of it, they can go back and get the book 0 so they can get a feel for the characters. Originally, the stories I did prior to this were supposed to be just an ongoing thing. I was just going to do short stories, and it works for them, really it does. Doing a long book took me a lot of time and effort. Even this book I had to split it up, because doing an entire book is just for these characters is taxing on me, and it's hard to get into when you've got so many characters and you've got so much story to tell. So I did this Burning Fire Rises Part 1. I'm in the midst of writing Part 2, but seeing how well I'm getting reviews back, I don't know. It's kind of weird to me. I had more reviews for the shorter stories, but then again, on the shorter stories, I also had audiobooks for them. There are there's 3 of the audio stories in there from book 0, that have gotten a lot of feedback. And the shorter stories I did put out and did put on Kindle, and they've had more response in Goodreads for that. But my full book, I've absolutely gotten 0, other than one review, and that was the one from the contest, which puzzles me greatly, because I sat there and I gave a lot of people a lot of copies of this book and heard 0 back. Now, do I take that as a hint, as the book was not good? I don't know, because nobody's reviewed it. Nobody's given me any feedback on it, other than these 2 ladies that have obviously not really enjoyed the book for what it is, mainly because it's not in their forte. And again, that Four Paws lady, she commented about how she wasn't really into the humor that my character was talking about. And I said, well, that's my bit of humor there, leaking into the book. And I said it was just to lighten the mood because it does get dark. I just find that, it'd be fun to have a little quirkiness to them. But obviously, it's not everybody's cup of tea, right? And judging from the books that she reads, or they both read, it's more overly fantasy based, is what they seem to enjoy. So, not a really good hookup for this story to them. Probably not the best judges I would have chosen to take this story, but then again, they just based it on a short blurb and the cover, I'm guessing, which should have tipped them off right away at what kind of thing they were going into. But whatever. And so one gave me a fairly decent review, and I'm not going to argue with it. She gave me her honest opinion of what she thought, and so that's fine. But I still wish it had gone through. So obviously, I'm not gonna continue into the SPFBO, which is saddening to me because I thought for sure I would go further than I did in this one. But then again, I always said that I was surprised I got in because I didn't think mine was worthy of like SPFBOing. They're more into like the whole fantasy, like the high fantasies, the elves and orcs and God knows what else. But anyway, this was the first time I got into the SPFBO. Did I try it before? I might have. I don't remember actually. It's been so long, and this is like they're well into, like they're in their 10th year of this contest. So it's been a good time to get your books in there. But I have a feeling that a lot of books will get cut that are not more fantasy realm kind of books, because I honestly think a lot of them prefer that kind of Game of Thrones kind of mentality. Maybe that's unfair of me to say, but honestly, I don't think so. I don't think I'll enter a contest like this one again, not for fantasy. Even though I am trying to get more into fantasy, writing more fantasy stories, I'm just not a big fantasy person. So for me to even get in there was quite the honor. I edged out the guy that wrote Wistful Ascending, JCM Byrne. Like his books are more fantasy based, I would say. Well, more science fiction fantasy, like a superhero in space. Which kudos to him for getting all the attention. But I really think a lot of these, well, I want to say the book community, but I don't want to like cast myself out here, but I feel like a lot of people tend to gravitate to certain people within the book community. And I don't know if that's fair of me to say or not, but I honestly think that there's no rapport with most of us talking. The ones that don't post enough or don't get noticed enough are kind of like a little ostracized a bit. Maybe that's just my impression, because whenever I go on to like the Discords or something like that, I mean, we generally have a good chat, but at the same time, I'm not getting like the friendly banter at most. Gosh, I'd hate to sound like a complainer about this, but I just feel like I'm not in the community as much. Maybe that's true. I can't be there 24/7. Like I've seen these guys posting constantly on there. Honestly, when do you start writing? Because I don't know. I'm trying to write as much as I can, but for me, it's hard since I have a slight learning disability, and so I get a little distracted, or it takes me longer to produce a book. So, I mean, I do what I can, but I also get sidetracked by other stories that pop into my head. and so I have to flesh out at least a few chapters on those books. Excuse me. So yes, I'm out of SPFBO. I'm a little disheartened by that, because I thought at least I could have gotten a bit further ahead, but I had two reviewers out of whatever this group was, 5 or 4 of them, and I think it was I don't know how to say it. I think it was a little one-sided, maybe, because I did see her reading vlog one time, the Four Paws lady, who had already stressed that she was going to DNF it before she had even finished reading it. I'm a little ticked off about that, because I sat there and went, you already made your decision before you even finished reading the book, which is her right. I mean, honestly, I thought a reviewer, or these people that are supposed to be reading when they've chosen the book, they read the rest of the book all the way to completion. But she seems to have like a ton of books on her site, where she reads nonstop, like romance books, other books. She has like other challenges. To me, that's a lot. That's a lot on a plate, and I feel like that's not good if you're doing like these challenges. But then Cassidy has her chosen few that want her to, she wants her team, and I guess these are the women that she chats with the most. Honestly, I don't know if it's because I'm a man, but I'm not going to put that in there. Forget that. That shouldn't even matter. I think it's just, I'm just disappointed. Anybody would be disappointed if they didn't make it all the way through. Or at least get past the first hurdle with one group. I mean, I've had that happen to me already anyway in the SPSFC. I've been attending that thing since day one. And now I've got my book that I put in the very first one, because when I put my first science fiction book into that contest, it didn't get accepted, not even in the slush pile. And there was a whole controversy going on at that first whole thing, because some books, were getting passed over, or there was a big miscommunication and some stuff. And it was just the first contest was just kind of plagued with problems. So, but that book I entered in there. I wasn't sure if I wanted to put it into the next contest, because they said anybody that didn't get in the first contest could put their book into the second contest. But by the second contest, I had another book, The Massive Planet, which I did put in. I was debating whether or not to put it in, and I did. And it made it to a slush pile, but then it got cut. And then the third contest that just happened not too long ago, I put in the Jungle Planet book, and I got more. Actually, that year got more being seen. If you're in the slush pile in 2, you knew that you weren't going to get very much coverage. I did manage to get one interview out of it, or maybe a writing or 2, but I mean, there wasn't as much coverage for that book, The Massive Planet, when it first went in. So I was a little mad about that too. But then it's almost 300 books. So I think that's my biggest issue, is just because when people get their books in, they don't get enough coverage. Well, in the third time, there was more coverage for everybody. Special shout out to Athena for doing some interviews. That's the one reading nurse. She managed to get a number of interviews done by the authors that had put their works in, and gave them a little exposure in that end. There was another interviews. There's been more there's also been like book sales that you could attend and stuff like that. And putting your books into like a book funnel page that had all the books that were available, which again, that's good exposure for those books. So I'm surprised I didn't do that for the SPFBOX, which it kind of, that's why it kind of ticked me off. I didn't get enough exposure in that one. It was bizarre to me. I thought that at least there'd be more to it. I mean, I did get an interview for that one as well, but I mean, other than that, yeah, I haven't had a whole lot of talk about my book or anything, and I can understand some frustration with some of these authors who submit these things, and then they're kind of like totally don't get anywhere. Some of these guys don't have like a social media place to go to do this stuff because a lot of them don't know how to do it. Some of them are just, putting their books in the ring, and they don't have any media hype up from it or whatsoever. I guess there's more people that are pumping more into it to get their books noticed. I noticed that on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. And maybe even other social channels like Instagram and whatnot. But I find that some books get more advertising buck than others do, and I don't know if that's, I get it. Like, it's expensive. I can't afford to do it either, since I'm just a starving artist myself. But I do as much social media as I can on my own because I'm a self-published author, right? I don't have a company to back me up like traditional publishers. But traditional publishers, that's a mythos that they will publish your book, that they will advertise your book. They will to an extent, but you have to do the rest of it. And that goes for indie published books as well. Indie books are published by independent companies. They will do some legwork, but again, it's mostly on the author to get that done. So, I mean, I'm self-published. I can't afford to hand out copies of books because that costs money. And, I have a family and I have bills to pay and all that stuff. But I'm just a self-publisher. And again, that's why I said a lot of people don't have money for this stuff. So, as much as I want to get that done, it's just financially not possible for me. In any case, I also wanted to delve into the idea of trigger warnings. That's another thing that keeps cropping up. I get a lot of feedback from some of these people who read the book and say, well, they should be like, I wish I'd known, like, there was some like hard stuff in here, like trigger warnings. And honestly, I'm not going to put trigger warnings in a book because I don't feel that's necessary. I understand that some people have trauma in their lives, that they have psychological problems. And then, if a book triggers you that much, then don't read it. I know that's a blasé way of saying that, and I've seen a lot of reviewers say, well, the author should be sympathetic to readers. And I said, but you picked up the book knowing full well what it is, or not, because they said, like I said, and they understand that sometimes it doesn't have the cover. And I've seen a few covers that don't give a whole lot, or the blurb doesn't mention anything too much about the book inside. I try to convey as much as I can in the blurb about what the book's about. And there's just a certain general knowledge that maybe if you are in that category of dark fantasy, there is going to be some matters that will not appeal to you. I don't know why people think this. And I really don't call it a trigger warning, because if it triggered you, you would be inconsolable. You wouldn't be able to function if it triggered you that much. That's more of an upset. You're upset by a certain matter in the book. if you've experienced trauma and all that, maybe you should seek help for somebody for that. And that's what I mean. Like, if you read the book and you get upset by the content and it disturbs you so greatly, maybe you need to talk to somebody about it, or maybe you need to talk to the group that you're reading it with about it, or you need to just discuss it with somebody. Honestly, I don't think you should be blaming an author for putting whatever they're in their book, knowing full well. I think you should do research into what the writer has written. Is there enough there to give you some context? Maybe you should look at the reviews. If there are no reviews yet, you could be the first one to give a review and let the others know what you've discovered in the book, helping them out. I just don't feel it's necessary to put any kind of warning system in the book. It's not like you're going to see a visual representation. It's a mental one. Books are there to entertain, frighten, strike emotion, a discussion. Because this is fiction, not nonfiction. Because when you read a fiction book, it is not real. It did not happen. Maybe it was based on something that a writer saw at one time or another, or just, has some thoughts they want to get out. But really, it's a non-existent matter. And that's, again, I don't want to belittle people with, trauma that have experienced some sort of event that almost emulates in the book. If that's the case, then don't finish the book. Don't recommend it. Don't, that's the only way I can think of, because to put in something ahead of the book to say, oh, this might contain this, you're actually destroying the experience for others. What may affect you may not affect another person in the same way. People experience things different. And in trauma, everybody gets trauma. Everybody gets something that, upsets them, or is something that's not, that won't, that won't make them want to finish the book. There's Stephen King novels. They're nothing but trigger warnings there. I'm sorry to say, but he's never had to say that in any of his books, and I've never heard anybody complain about it before, other than in discussion groups about how disturbing some of the imagery that he conveys in it. But when you go into a Stephen King novel, you know what you're going for in a Stephen King novel, although he has moved into other areas now. So I just think that you should do your due diligence and bone up on that before you commit to a book. Just because you picked it off a shelf because you thought it was great doesn't mean you should be complaining about it afterwards. Save that for the review. And then telling an author to put something ahead of their novel to warn others. That sounds like a Lemony Snicket novel. Oh, you may not enjoy this book. I'm telling you right now. And I don't know what it is about this current trend of this happening. I've never seen this until 2 years ago. Start cropping up more and more as we go. I don't know why this has become such a thing. Do you say the same things at movies? Movies did get those rating systems, and I know that people would love to have rating systems in books, but at the same time, it's a book. You can purchase it anywhere. Movies, people still go to it, even though they know full well that that's an R-rated movie. I've seen parents bring their kids into an R-rated movie, for goodness sakes, because they didn't have a babysitter. Well, that's on them, not the people that made the movie. They put the movie out and they rated it, and there you go. Buyer beware. And that's what I always say, buyer beware. You got to know what you're purchasing before you pick it out. And that may sound insensitive, and that may sound like I'm not, what is it? I'm not like sensitive to any of their feelings. Just far be it. You don't know me. You don't know anything I've had to deal with. You don't know anything I've had to deal with in my family. It's really not your business of what happens in my life, just as mine is not to intrude on yours. Things happen to people, and I wish it didn't. But like I said, this is a fiction book. These are fiction books we write, and it's there to entertain, to cause discussion, to it's just another form of entertainment and enjoyment. And for you to warn people to say, listen, you need to put like something ahead of this to let me know. Honestly, if you haven't like perused the book or gotten a sense of it before you started reading, I can't help that. I'm not there to tell you what's going to happen because I don't want you. I want you to experience the book and then give me your opinion afterwards in a review or something. But like I said, you could do that afterwards and then you can convey your thoughts. Personally, not on the author as a person, because you don't know what that person's like in real life. You could only comment on the book at the story. And I think that's where it should stay for a lot of reviews. They shouldn't be talking about authors in that way. And that's when that whole thing with the authors versus reviewers starts happening. I don't believe that the authors should be like striking back at the reviewers. But I get that, it's hard because a lot of the reviewers do take a pot shot at some of these authors and their personal lives or calling them out as an individual. And sometimes that does get to us. Sometimes that does. And we're human. And that's how we're human. We read books too. We're not like, it's not like we just wrote these things and, well, that's it. I'm not going to read any other book or anything like that. We read books and we have the right to review books as well. Maybe not to review our own within somebody else's review. I don't believe in that, but I also don't like personal attacks. That to me is, I don't care what you say about the book story and all that, but not as the author doing the book. But again, I'm getting off topic about that. Trigger warnings. If anything, trigger warnings are my trigger warnings, because anytime anybody brings that brings that up, I get a little annoyed by that. And that's just me. You have your right to say that. I have my right to not put that in my book. But like I said, I'm not unsympathetic. I would, if anybody asked, I would say, listen, if you're not into these certain things that in the book, I would not suggest you read this book. But I'm not going to say that in front of a novel that somebody's just picked up or bought. I want you to experience, because you read the blurb, you saw the cover, you should get a general feel of what the book is. And even if you don't, just read a few pages in and then decide. I know it's hard to garner that when you've got you got to go through halfway to the book before anything major happens. But you could always do that. You could go halfway into the book or read a few pages in there and then decide whether or not you should, continue on. But then you're ruining the experience for yourself. People need to deal with trauma, and people need to deal with things head on. That's the only way we grow. That's the only way we learn. And for an adult brain, we should be able to ration ourselves into that mindset. My wife has personal issues that, she seeks counseling, and we talk about things, and that's a healthy way of doing it. There have been some programs that we found disturbing, and we talked about it, and we didn't, we chose not to finish that episode or watch that series or whatever, just because we saw what it was, and then we made the conscious decision as adults to not continue on. And if it still bothered my wife, I would talk to her about it. And I'd want her to like confront the issue at hand and say, look, you realize that's not real, that didn't happen. And we talk through it, and like any normal person would. And I'm not saying that nobody's not normal, that if they don't share that stuff. I'm just saying that if it's a bigger issue for you, then you should seek counsel for that. At least get somebody more qualified to help you out. Because if you can't deal with it, then you need to see somebody and get that off your chest. And just you have to confront the issue. You have to. It's just the only way you move on. If you keep that locked in and you don't talk to anybody about it, and you're just forever fearful about everything, you won't do well. Really, you won't. Any mental health issue needs to be discussed with a physician or counseling, or, you need to talk about it. You just do. I've had issues. I've had to talk to it like with health professionals. And, it's good to get it out. And it's good to, you need that release sometimes. And even in books, I always find that books are actually good releases for some of that, because you're reading and you get to read it out and you get to think about it. That's why books are amazing. That's why books are just the best modes of generating a fantasy for yourself, where you wouldn't be able to have this fantasy or experience these things. And it's a good escapism to another place, another life, things that you probably wouldn't want to do in real life, because it's not right, and it's not, or it's just not possible. It's a good way of experiencing something without having to experience personally. It's a way to unlock our minds to other possibilities and all these things. So I don't want to put trigger warnings in my books, because I want you to experience it and I want you to discuss about it. And that's why it's such a great form of expression. I mean, it's just a way to talk to people about it. A good book will get people excited, talking about it, sharing experiences. It's the only way to have some form of freedom. The freedom of mind. The freedom of being who you are. Now, I said this for fiction. Nonfiction's another matter. Nonfiction, that deals with some truth, like a lot of truths of today's world. And those things are real. It happened. That's why it's nonfiction. So if you find a book that's nonfiction, historical, whatever, those events did happen. And that's probably why it would be disturbing, because it did happen. And I've seen a lot of that too. I mean, I've read some real novels where these people had experienced horrific trauma and stuff. And that's, that to me is, that's where you need the trigger warnings, if ever. If it was a real event that happened, then yes, I would think in those cases of a nonfiction book, maybe that would be a good thing to put that in there to warn everybody about it. But when it's a fiction book, it's not the same thing. It didn't really happen. It's not a real event. It's just made up. It is a fiction. So if you can't discern between the two, that's, well, I guess that depends on your point of view of things. My point of view is that a book is there to entertain you, whether it's disturbing or whether it's hilarious. It's there, like I said, it's there to entertain. It's just, that's just it. My stance is I don't put that stuff in. And I'm sorry if ever that might offend anybody. I'm sorry if that's something that, you frown upon. But, I have the right to deny that for my books. And if that's going to make you decide never to read my books, that's on you. I can't change your mind about certain things, nor would I ever try to. All I say, you're not willing to give it a shot just based on that. Seems a little one-sided to me. And, you may say that's back to me. And so you're a little one-sided about not putting that in front of your book. True, but it's my choice. And I'll deal with the consequence of that if I have to. Now, my books aren't generally that bad that they deserve such warnings. Books have been doing this for so long that they don't really need it. I mean, you pretty much know what you're going to get in a book that's fiction. Either it's a science fiction that might have some violence, and that could be general. That could be any kind of violence. The guy might have just struck somebody, and that was it for the entire book. Or they blew up a ship, and there was people on it. That was it. That was the only thing that was on in that book. And again, that goes for sex. There might be a mere mention of something happening, or there could be a full-on scene of the events happening. But again, we're human. We're adults. We should be able to discern that. I mean, what about all these romance books that are out right now? You can't tell me that there isn't this sort of thing going on in these books constantly. I know that there's a lot of readers of this stuff, especially in fantasy, where they're a little bit more aggressive. And I get that a lot of women don't like to see that stuff. They don't like to hear about it. They don't like to read about it. And yet they are. Why? It's because of fascination. Those that have experienced it, of course they would be offended. Of course they've had to deal with that kind of trauma. And then obviously that book is not for you. And I wouldn't recommend that book. But if it's a minor thing, still that doesn't make it right. But I mean, at the same time, it's part of the story. It doesn't take place in our world. And if it does, then it's not real. It's still not real. It's a fiction. It came out of somebody's imagination, story-wise. It's integral to the story, to the plot. Is it? Sometimes these books aren't. It's just all one-sided. And those are the books, obviously, that aren't going to do well. So, there you go. So, what's the point of this? Anyway, this is just me talking about what I thought of that and of the SPFBO. So I'm at a contest, but I'm still in the SPFS 4. I'm in 4 now, with Your Service is Required. A sort of dystopian robot AI book that deals with after humanity has been taken over by them. So that book's in there. And I'm also in the, how do you say it? The SFINC 2, which is the independent self-published book, novellas. And I've put my my short story novella in that, The Immortality Complex, where it's a man that's been forced to, have this body that's immortal forced upon him, and he has had to live out his life with, just having to deal with being immortal forever. So that's out there in that one too. And then I lost out to the Book Bloggers Award contest. That my book didn't go through. That was The Jungle Planet in that one as well. But they did give me a general nice review-ish sort of thing, which is fine. Again, not everybody... They only read about 10% of the book anyway, before they decided moving on. So you don't really get a sense of the book. When I was reading their reviews that they got mailed back to me, it was like they didn't get to the good parts, a lot of them. They were just complaining about most of the stuff that happened earlier. And I said, well, you need to read the whole book before you can give that kind of context. But anyway, that didn't go through, so there we are again. Something about my books. I get in, but I don't go all the way. That seems to be my case. I put them in there. It's up to them to whether or not I'm good. I know there's far better authors than me sometimes in these contests. So, and again, it's a choice of people's reading. You know, some people prefer more fantastical stories than mine. I like writing the books that I want to read. So if you like reading what I read, well, or what I write, that's up to you to join along. But I enjoy what I write. Enjoy writing. It's fun. And I never want to stop, and I'm not going to stop. You know, I used to get discouraged about my books, like they didn't do well, but I just keep cranking them out because that's all I can do. I won't even go into the AI thing because it's just getting too complicated, and I made a video about that already. Another YouTube video that I'll put up sooner rather than later. But my general feelings on it, and you can look at there to see what I say. I'm not for it. I'm not against it. I'm kind of in the gray zone right now. But more so to the not really digging it kind of thing. So don't think that I'm just like totally for it. I'm not. There's goods and bads in AI, and I try to think of the good, but I also know that there's a lot of bad happening with it. So, but I won't go into that right now. It's in that video. I'll put that one up soon. Again, if anybody's watching this on YouTube, and I guess it'll be within a week or so. I'll try to get it on there. In the meantime, I've got books to write. I'm in the middle of writing Space Rockers, which, you know, is on the Royal Road app. And I'm about almost finished with that one, hopefully. And then I've got my other sequel book to The Massive Planet, and I'm still in the midst of writing. Trying to get those out, more science fiction out. And I'm writing the Burning Fire Rises Part 2. Like, I got a ton of books. And I just started another short story, a couple of them. So I'm pretty much swamped in my own thoughts right now. So you'll just have to bear with me if I don't get books out. Not that any much people are buying them right now, because I've had months of dry spells. Again, I don't have the money to advertise. I don't have the resources. I don't know how these other people are managing to do this without having to burn some money. Seems weird to me that they're getting so much coverage, but then, like I said, it's been a little favoritism in some areas. And that has nothing to do with the writer or the author that, you know, was putting out the book. It's just people that leaned more towards them because they know them and they're pushing them more so than anybody else. Again, that's just my feeling on the matter. It might be like my own thoughts, like making that up, but I don't know. I just think it just seems like more people that are siding with these authors and pushing out their content for them seems a little biased. So, and if you keep hearing a beep, that's me on Discord. I'm just watching some of this stuff. Man, these guys are just chatting away today. All right, well, in that case, I better get off so I don't have to deal with this anymore. And that's it for my podcast for today. And oh, geez, I'll talk to you tomorrow, because apparently it's very chatty on Discord. And that's another place you can find me is Discord. Anyway, I'll leave it at that, and I'll talk to you guys again next time. Take care.